Seline Mumbe is 49 years old and lived without electricity for her first 48 years, until she finally got power 10 months ago.
So 3 buildings here, all connected with electricity.
Yeah.
Mumbe lives in Unami, a village 170 miles northwest of Nairobi.
I
felt like I was in a different world because my house was well lit. I knew I was no longer going to spend money on oil. I was also not going to spend a lot of time walking to the market to charge my cell phone.
Her home was recently hooked up as part of the Last Mile Connectivity Project, a government program to connect 70% of Kenyans to the grid by this year. It's part of a larger goal to achieve universal access to electricity by 2020. It's an ambitious undertaking. Kenya would become one of the first sub-Saharan African nations to reach this milestone. And Kenya has made progress rapidly, going from 27% of the population connected in 2013 to 56% in 2016, adding more than 1.2 million households to the grid last year alone. The quest began a decade ago by building transformers that distribute electricity. First priority was connecting hospitals, market centers, and schools to the grid. Now, the Last Mile project is focusing on connecting rural households. Mumbe uses the new electricity to light up her house, iron her family's clothes, and warm water with a heater that plugs into the wall.
Initially, I used to iron with a charcoal iron box and boil water with firewood. Having electricity makes work easier. Even if I want to wash my clothes at night, all I have to do is switch on the light.
She's also started a small business. Neighbors without electricity pay 10 cents to charge their cell phones.
We're still looking at those results.
Susanna Berkauer is a research economist at the University of California, Berkeley. She's part of a team that surveyed 4,000 households in Kenya to measure the impact of electricity on people's lives, everything from health to education to employment.
So in our survey, we asked a general question about life satisfaction, just how satisfied are you with your life? And actually we saw an improvement there. It frees up people's time, it allows them to engage in other activities in the home, or just to take that time to relax and feel happier and be less stressed.
Kenya Energy Minister Charles Keter says the success of the Last Mile project can be applied throughout Africa, where more than 600 million people, half of the continent's population, still live without electricity.
I think the African continent can learn a lot from the last mile connectivity, that it's possible for governments to spearhead the programs so that the narrative of Africa being a dark continent should not be there.
2/3 of the cost of Kenya's electrification campaign is being funded by loans from the World Bank and the African Development Bank. But even with such widespread support, the cost of connecting to the grid and wiring a house falls on individual Kenyans. Like Roy Otieno, he and his wife Belinda are subsistence farmers in Unami. There's a new electricity pole right outside their house, but they can't afford the cost of connecting to it.
Is it frustrating to be so close to the source of the electricity but not have access?
I always wish whenever I walk out from my house, I check out the pole and then I just wish that it is already in my house. It is frustrating.
In a 2015 UC Berkeley study, half of rural Kenyan households surveyed lived within 200 meters of a power line, yet didn't have electricity.
There's this whole other category of undergrid, which are people that are off-grid, so they're not directly connected to electricity, but they're not living 100 miles away from the electricity grid. They're actually living, in many cases, 10 feet away from their nearest pole.
The cost of connecting to the grid has dropped from about $350 before the Last Mile program started to $150 today, thanks to subsidies from the Kenyan government. And a power company loan program gives residents 3 years to pay off the installation bill. Still, $150 is about 4 times what Kenyans in this region earn in a month. For those who do manage to get connected, it's only worth the investment if the power actually works. Many Kenyans complain of frequent outages lasting from minutes to days. When we met hair salon owner Susan Adhiambo Kopat right outside Unami, the salon had lost power for more than an hour. Kopat and her employees were limited to braiding customers' hair because they couldn't use a hair straightener or a blow dryer.
It feels bad because you decide to spend your money to get an electricity connection so you can use it to run your business, but you end up experiencing blackouts. It's very disappointing.
With this type of rapid expansion,
We have had a lot of planned interruptions.
Stanley Mutwiri is the head of infrastructure for the government-controlled Kenya Power and Lighting Company, known as KPLC. Mutwiri concedes that some unplanned outages occur due to acts of nature, like wind or rain, but he says most are planned and necessary.
Every time you are connecting some new customers on the line, you must interrupt others.
KPLC is building new substations to increase the capacity of the electrical grid. When this station goes online next month, the transformer will be able to supply 3 times as many households as before. Kenya Energy Minister Charles Keter says the government is also planning ahead and producing excess power right now to ensure it can accommodate the rise in future demand.
We cannot wait until when we have maybe big industries or the demand is high. It's like building a road. You cannot say, why are you building a road when there are no vehicles? You build a road to create that environment in which people can now purchase vehicles.
Renewable energy will be crucial to Kenya meeting the surge in demand for electricity. Right now, the country gets over 60% of its energy from renewable sources, such as geothermal, hydro, and more recently, wind.
The Turkana wind farm in northern Kenya is designed to supply 1/5 of the nation's energy. When it's completed later this year, it will be the largest wind farm in Africa. In Kenya, renewable energy is cheaper than fossil fuels.
Fossil fuels have got one unknown. That is what is going to be the cost of fuel tomorrow. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know how long this fossil fuel is going to be there. But the renewable energy, like for example, the sun, we always say, I'm sure tomorrow the sun will be up.
Nighttime is when the personal impact of electricity is most visible, as well as its uneven distribution. At Roy Otieno's house, with no electricity, the family eats dinner by the light of only 2 kerosene lamps. But down the road, Seline Mumbe's electrified house has become a beacon for school children. They come from all over the village to study and do homework. Beryl Otieno is 17.
By around 9 p.m., the lights used to get dim, and I could not even see what I was reading clearly. I used to study for 2 to 3 hours, but nowadays I always study for 5 hours.
But surprisingly, Burkhauer says, the research shows that people's lives haven't significantly changed with the flip of a switch. After 1 year, students did not perform better in English or math tests. Using electricity, which likely reduces the burning of kerosene or wood, didn't improve health. And while women worked more, household incomes didn't improve.
So we'd like to go back in a few years and see if the long-term effects are different than the short-term effects, but maybe not. Maybe these things just aren't going to improve by as much as people were expecting.
One reason may be that newly connected households don't have that many ways to use the electricity yet.
If you provide somebody with an electricity connection, but they're not able to afford the appliances that would really allow them to use that electricity connection, how much could it really even benefit them? And if we can answer those types of questions, and we can compare that with similar research that looks at the effects of improving your education or the effects of improving your healthcare, then a household and indeed a government can make a decision about which of those is better to invest in.
But Energy Minister Charles Keter says providing electricity is a human right and should be a priority even for poor rural households.
Some of them have homes with roofs made out of thatch. Some of them don't have reliable access to water or even food. Is electricity really the priority for these people?
Power is very essential in any developing country. And that's why as a country, whether you live in a grass-thatch home or any other related structures, we will provide you with power.